Sherry has always wanted a baby girl again. She was going to have somebody make her a child, another daughter, and then she was going to try to take him away from her. She did tell Zachary that if turns out to be a girl, that she wanted him to sign off his rights to her, and he did that. He said that was fine.
Welcome back, and thanks for being here. If you're not yet subscribed to A Wicked World, then make sure you go ahead and do that now. And if you liked this video, then it would be great if you left a comment or gave it a like. It would really help out the channel with the YouTube algorithm. The story I have for you today is one that's truly horrific. It's one about a family who teamed up against a sweet girl who had intellectual disabilities, and they violently ended her life. Vera Jo Reigle was born in Findlay, Ohio on July 11, 1986, to her mother, Vera Jo Messersmith, and her father, Willard Reigle. She had some learning disabilities as well as ADHD. By the time she was in her early 20s, she had the mind of an 8-year-old. Despite her disability, Vera still earned her high school diploma in 2005. She was said to be a sweet, caring girl who always went out of her way to make others happy. Vera also liked listening to country music and wearing all kinds of costume jewelry. Now, Vera Jo had a tough childhood, and she had been essayed by her own father starting when she was only 11 years old. Her mother, however, would end up leaving her father, and she met a decent man named Lynn Messersmith, who would go on to adopt Vera and her sister, giving them a sense of security for the very first time. When Vera was 19 years old, she met 13-year-old Zachary Brooks, who lived on Bank Street, just a couple blocks away from her house that was located on Center Street in Findlay. Zachary also had cognitive disabilities as well as a personality disorder. The two became friends and would start dating when Zachary was 15 and Vera was almost 21. Shortly after they began dating, Vera would move into Zachary's mother's home, Sherry Lynn Brooks. Sherry was known around Findlay as Sugar Babe, a nickname that her father had given her. She also sold methamphetamine, was manipulative, and a compulsive liar. Sherry often pressured people into doing exactly what she wanted them to do. She has also been called the female Charles Manson. So Sherry herself has quite the history. She had been placed into foster care when she was only 3 years old, after the state found that her father, Big Chuck, had been SAing her. She would be returned to her mother's care, however, when she was 13, after her mother had left her father. Soon after this, Sherry began a relationship with her first cousin, Daniel Bixler. Their family knew of this incestuous relationship, as they joked around and called them kissing cousins. At the same time, Sherry, by choice, was sleeping with her own father still, Big Chuck. In 1981, Sherry and her cousin boyfriend, Daniel, ended up having a child together. He was named Scotty, but when Scotty was only a few weeks old, Sherry and Daniel were accused of SAing him. So he was then removed from their care and placed into Sherry's mother's care, Charlotte. However, when Scotty was a teenager, for whatever reason, he began to spend more time at his mother's house in Findlay. The year after Scotty was born, in 1982, Sherry married a man named Mike Maloney, and they would end up having a son together named Joshua the following year. Joshua would end up being taken away as well. This had occurred after his father had gotten frustrated with the colicky 4-month-old, and then he slapped him and threw him onto the couch. Sherry then had yet another baby boy named Michael Jr. in 1984, and she lost custody of him within weeks as well, after there were allegations reported to Child Services of more SA. Sherry would then go on to deliver her first daughter, Maria, in 1986, and everyone who knew her said that she was a completely different mother after that. She was attentive and caring, and she kept Maria well fed and even dressed her up in nice clothes. She was obsessed with her new baby girl. But then, the day before Easter, Maria had to be rushed to the emergency room because she had vaginal bleeding. For some reason, though, she was allowed to go back home with her mother, Sherry, after the trip to the hospital. Luckily, she was removed from Sherry's care the very next day, after she failed to show up at a doctor's appointment. Her family said that Sherry was never again the same after losing Maria, but she would go on to have yet another child, another girl, who she would name Sherry in 1987. But again, within only 6 months, there were more allegations of the child being SA'd, and she was removed from Sherry's home. She would later go on to be adopted. Then, Sherry would have her 6th child, Kevin Jr., in 1991. He was also called Punky. Sherry divorced her husband Mike the same year and got married to Kevin Jr.'s father, Kevin Brooks Sr. Even though they have the same last name, they were not related this time. In June of 1992, Sherry delivered her son Zachary. Then, her son Garth came the following year, 1993, before she then had her 9th and final child, Chucky, in 1994. It's said that all of Sherry's children, except for baby Sherry, who was taken away right after birth, were molested by their mother. One time, a relative even said that they had gone over to Sherry's house, and when they walked in, they caught her holding up one of her infant sons and sucking on his nether regions. And Sherry's husband, Kevin Brooks Sr., was said to be a complete doormat to her. He would wait on her hand and foot, and he would never contradict her. And at this point, when she was married to Kevin Brooks Sr., she was still carrying on her sexual relationship with her dad. Sherry somehow would end up maintaining custody of the 4 children that she had with Kevin Brooks Sr., although she wanted a baby girl, and she was willing to do anything to get one. Now, as Sherry's children started to grow up, a few of them decided to return back home to the mother who had abused them. And they had all grown up to be criminals and gang members. Additionally, most of the people who lived in the Brooks home were on disability. This, along with welfare and money from criminal activities such as selling drugs, was how the family supported itself. Now, since her own baby girls had been taken away by the state, Sherry decided that she was going to start finding girls to have babies for her, which meant that she was going to encourage her teenage son's girlfriends to start getting pregnant. Sherry first began to pressure her son Garth into getting his 15-year-old girlfriend Gina pregnant. And as soon as Gina did fall pregnant, Sherry welcomed her into her home. But within mere months, Gina realized that she had made a big mistake. Sherry was controlling and didn't treat Gina well at all, so Gina decided to leave the home. But shortly before she did, she found out that she miscarried the baby. Sherry, of course, was not happy about this at all, and now she needed a new plan. This time, she focused in on her 13-year-old son, Zachary, who was dating 19-year-old Vera. Now, Sherry had actually known Vera since she was just a baby. Vera's mother, Verna, and her father, Willard, had lived in the same apartment complex as Sherry and Mike, and Vera had been born around the time that Maria turned 6 months old. In fact, right after Maria had been removed from her custody, Sherry turned most of her attention to baby Vera. She kept asking Vera's mother if she could babysit and hold her all the time, to the point where Verna finally had to remind her that it was her baby and not Sherry's. Regardless of this, however, the two families had kept in touch, and when Vera was only 19, as I had said earlier, she was living a few blocks away from the Brooks home. Now, Sherry began to encourage Zachary to have Vera over on a regular basis. And the more time that Vera spent at the Brooks home, the more Sherry would try to convince her that she loved her and her own mother did not. Sherry even spread a rumor telling people that Vera's mother was dead. Now that Vera was living with the Brooks family, she wanted to make sure that they were happy she was there and that they liked her. The Brooks family, however, would take advantage of Vera's willingness to please. Shortly after she moved in, she found herself doing the majority of the housework and then taking care of Sherry as well. Sherry was diabetic, so she had a lot of pain and issues with her feet. She was overweight as well as wheelchair-bound, and Vera was tasked with unwrapping her feet, massaging them, and then wrapping them back up in bandages. And if Vera made one wrong move or applied too much pressure, she would get hit with a long wooden stick that looked like a back scratcher. After Vera had been living with the Brooks family for about a year, they had completely cut her off from the outside world. Her cell phone was taken away from her, and she was not allowed to go visit her family. On the rare occasion that Vera was let outside of the home, and she saw someone she knew, she would more or less wave, then run away. Also, immediately after Vera had moved into the Brooks home, Sherry began to cash her disability checks and keep the money for herself. Then Vera would finally end up getting pregnant by Zachary at the beginning of 2009, and Sherry was thrilled. She was even more thrilled when she found out that it was going to be a little girl. From that point on, Sherry became obsessed with the baby that Vera was carrying. And she began to take control of the things that Vera ate, as well as her doctor's appointments. As Vera began to approach her due date in December, Sherry was only getting more possessive of this baby that was not hers and unstable. She stepped up her plans to take this baby on as her own and stopped allowing Vera to do anything, picking out baby furniture, picking out clothes, or even choosing her new daughter's name. Sherry told Vera that her daughter's name was going to be Willadine. She had named this new baby girl after Vera's father, Willard, who had essayed her, and Sherry's father, whose real name was Dean and had essayed her as well. Though she would later say that Vera was actually the one who had picked out the name because she wanted to name her daughter after her father. But all of Vera's family denies this, saying she hated her father and never spoke to him. She already loved her baby girl so much that there's no way she would have chosen to name her after two vile men like that. Shortly before Willadine was born, in September, Sherry convinced Zachary to sign over his parental rights to her. And then a month later, towards the end of October, Sherry had yet another idea. Her birthday was coming up on November 3rd, and even though Willadine wasn't supposed to be born until December, Sherry decided she wanted Willadine born on her birthday. She then began to try to get Vera to go into early labor. Castor oil has a history of serving as a homeopathic remedy, and one of its uses is to induce labor, though it's not recommended. However, if a pregnant woman does take it, it's only recommended to take about 4 tablespoons. Well, Sherry went out and bought Vera 3 bottles of castor oil. She had then mixed these into orange juice and forced Vera to drink all of it. This made Vera extremely sick, and she went into labor just as Sherry hoped. Baby Willadine would end up being born 6 weeks early, but on November 4th, the day after Sherry's birthday. And due to Sherry's complete selfishness, poor little Willadine had to spend a few weeks in the NICU, as she had been born underweight, had difficulty breathing, and had a heart problem.
Supposedly her original date was supposed to be December 6th. That she was supposed to come out. But she decided she was coming out to have pumpkin pie and mashed potatoes with Mama for Thanksgiving. So she come out early. And she wanted to meet her Mama.
And unbelievably, while they were still in the hospital with Willadine, Sherry would become upset when a nurse would hand her over to her mother, Vera, and she insisted that they instead hand the baby to her. After baby Willadine came home from the hospital, Vera tried her best to be a good mother. She really loved her baby girl, but Sherry was not happy about that, because in her mind, Willadine was her baby. As such, Sherry was the main one who cared for Willadine, and only occasionally let her own mother, Vera, hold her. Of course, Willadine also did not sleep with her own mother. She slept instead in Sherry's room. So now that Vera's baby was there, she had no purpose in the Brooks home. Despite Zachary once being in love with Vera, he now showed her total disregard. And he even began to actively pursue relationships while she was still living there. He would even frequently post on Facebook about how much he needed a girl. So now no one in the house had any use for Vera. She was forced to have sex with all the Brooks men who lived in the home. And because no one cared about her any longer for any reason, her beatings only continued to get worse. And Sherry would threaten Vera, saying that she was going to kill baby Willadine if she ever disobeyed her or tried to leave. And Vera had no reason not to believe these threats, so she stayed and endured the abuse. And oftentimes when Vera failed to meet Sherry's standards, instead of hurting her herself, she would call Zachary over and Zachary would hit Vera. As I said, Vera was very rarely allowed to hold her own daughter, only when Sherry allowed it. And if she tried to any other time, she would get beaten. Instead of tending to her motherly duties, Vera now cleaned the entire household and took care of Sherry. It was now considered her job to take care of Sherry's legs and feet. And she wasn't allowed to speak to anyone outside the home, not even her own sister. Now, family members of Vera Jo knew that she was being abused, and they had contacted social services as well as the police. But when officers were sent out to the Brooks home to check on her, they would always speak to her in front of Sherry. So, of course, she would say that she was fine and blame her bruises on bumping into a coffee table or falling down the stairs. At one point, Vera's sister Ashley even contacted the police and reported that her sister was being held hostage in the Brooks home. But no report was ever even filed. Authorities hadn't been out to the home on that occasion. However, they had been out to the house a number of other times, which means that they and social services knew about the filthy conditions that baby Willadine was living in. They also knew that there was no running water in the home, and they had to use buckets as toilets. There were also actual pigs living inside the home, inside of Sherry's bedroom closet. Not to mention the fact that social services had already taken away a number of Sherry's own children, and now baby Willadine was sleeping in the same bedroom as her. During one of Vera's frequent hospital trips, this time with a broken nose that was given to her by Zachary, she was forced to tell them that her black boyfriend had done it to her. She said that he lived in the next town over, but of course, everyone knew that she had no boyfriend and was never allowed to leave the home anyways.
I can't even think of his name now, but it's Demetrius Jones, I think it was.
She made up the Desmond Thompson guy from Lima.
And he had busted her nose because she had to go out to the hospital because she had a bump here. And they said she might have a concussion and bleeding.
They come up with this story saying that Vera had a boyfriend, a black man that was out of Lima or somewhere, and he come up here and got in a fight and punched her in the face and broke her nose. But that's not true. It was her son, Zachary.
He came downstairs, went straight to his mom, asked her what happened, and Sherry just came up with an excuse saying that Vera was the one that pushed her own daughter into the coffee table. And Zachary just listened to what she said, went over to Vera, swung his fist and hit her in the face.
As time went by, the treatment of Vera in the home got worse and worse. One time, Sherry even told her that her black eyes looked cute, like a raccoon. Sherry's son, Kevin Brooks Jr., also known as Punky, was said to be the town's Crips gang leader. So, he was very much feared. That's until the 19-year-old got killed on August 5th, 2010. He and his girlfriend Heather had been walking down the road on their way to score some heroin when suddenly a car slammed into them. And even though investigators ended up determining that it was just an accident, Sherry was hell-bent on getting vengeance. Now, since Sherry didn't like Punky's girlfriend Heather to begin with, she found it very easy to push the blame onto her. And she decided to say that Heather had actually been the one that pushed Punky in front of the car. The reason why she didn't like Heather was because Heather had been dating Punky for years, but when they had had a baby together, it was a boy. So Sherry had convinced herself that Heather had pushed her son out in front of the vehicle and killed him on purpose. At one point, Sherry even made herself believe that Heather had paid the driver to kill Punky. During a memorial gathering at the Brooks home for Punky, Sherry spotted Heather, and she asked another family member to beat her up for her, which they immediately did. Following his memorial, Sherry had Punky cremated, and she kept a bag of his ashes on a shelf in the living room. She then added one of his favorite t-shirts, his Crips paraphernalia, and even had a spot where she could leave him his favorite candy bars. So after Vera had been denied food for a long period of time, which was becoming more and more normal, she was hungry and desperate and decided to take the Kit Kat off of Punky's altar and eat it. But her actions would end up costing her. Gina, the girl who had once lived in the Brooks home but miscarried, saw Vera take the candy bar, and she decided to tell Sherry. This was the girl that Sherry had previously treated terribly. So not only did she come back to the Brooks home, but she was also ratting on Vera for eating. It's said that Gina was actually back at the Brooks home because she was now dating Zachary. Now, when Gina gave Sherry this information, she was, of course, livid. She saw this as a huge sign of disrespect towards Punky, and not only beat Vera, but then made her sleep in the closet with the pigs, and made her eat blood, feces, and garbage. Then there was an incident in the Brooks home with a can of mace. Apparently, someone had set off a canister of pepper spray in an upstairs bedroom, and everyone blamed Vera for it. At the time, Sherry had been trying to convince Michael's girlfriend, Shannon, into getting pregnant. And even though Shannon said she was pregnant, she was not at the time. But she would insist that the mace going off had caused her to have a miscarriage. Which also meant that that was Vera's fault. And that, of course, made Sherry angry. Shannon had also told multiple people that she wanted Vera dead for this, for killing her pretend baby. Pretty much anything and everything that went wrong in the Brooks home was Vera's fault at this point. By the time Willadine was 2 and she was turning into a toddler, Sherry lost interest. She wanted a new baby now. Then she began pressuring both Zachary and Garth into getting girls pregnant, but she most certainly did not want Vera to be the mother. She also didn't want Vera around at all, which meant she needed to figure out how to get rid of her. Sherry and her family then began to openly plan Vera's demise. They joked about different scenarios, such as drugging her with sleeping pills, then leaving her on the railroad tracks. Shannon, Michael's wife, also added that Sherry needed to cut her up and put her on the tracks. Vera was sitting in the same room, and Sherry then looked over to her, waved, and smiled, and then continued the conversation. Sherry believed that if Vera was to get hit by a train, it would smash her so hard that it would turn her into hamburger meat, and no one would be able to identify her. And so she decided that that was what needed to be done. Around the same time, a cousin of the Brooks family, Daniel Bixler Jr., the son of the cousin that Sherry had once been involved with, was on the run from the law and moved into the Brooks home with his 17-year-old girlfriend, Nicole Peters. Daniel had actually just been released from jail 3 weeks prior and had already gotten himself into trouble, so there was a warrant out for his arrest. He was also a self-professed killer and had a teardrop tattoo. Nicole, his girlfriend, fantasized about killing someone because she also wanted a teardrop tattoo like her boyfriend. And Sherry saw this as her striking gold. She now had a solution to her Vera problem. So she schemed up a plan and decided to tell Daniel and Nicole that Punky's death was not actually Heather's fault, but instead it was Vera's fault because she had been walking with him that night and she had pushed him in front of the car. Sherry also made statements to Daniel and Nicole that when she wasn't looking, Vera would abuse baby Willadine. And with these statements, Daniel and Nicole decided they were going to do Sherry's dirty work for her. On March 22, 2011, the non-stop beating of Vera Jo began. Chucky, one of Sherry's sons, took a padlock and tied it to a belt, and then the family members took turns beating her with it. A paddle was also used, and they stomped on Vera's head. And witnesses, including Sherry, said that this kind of behavior was turning Nicole on sexually. She and her boyfriend would take breaks from beating Vera, then go have sex in the other room, and come back afterwards and continue to beat her. And Sherry was egging on Daniel and Nicole the entire time, saying, "Hit her again, Nicole. Vera is a whore. Nicole, she wants to sleep with Danny. Hit her again." Over the next few days, Daniel, Nicole, and Zachary got high on multiple illicit substances and continued to beat Vera. At one point, they even essayed her with a toothbrush. It didn't take long for her to be so beaten and starved that she could barely walk. While all of this was going on, Chucky, Garth, and some of the other Bixler cousins got into a fight with a group of teenagers outside the home. Police had been called, but by the time they arrived, the fight had mostly been broken up, so they had no reason to approach the house. Then, 3 days after the beatings began, on March 25th, Vera was forced into a bathroom by Daniel and Nicole. There, they stabbed her in her legs. And apparently, Sherry even stuck her finger into Vera's wounds at this point. On March 26th, Vera endured even more abuse, and Daniel repeatedly stabbed her. At one point, he also handed the weapon over to a family friend named Angel and said, "Want to slice on Vera or cut her up?" It's unknown whether this person ended up taking any part in it. However, they later said that they saw Daniel, Nicole, and Zachary all beating her. Now, the events for the rest of the evening are a little bit unclear, as everyone has a different story. However, the results are all the same. Zachary, Daniel, and Nicole would force Vera Jo to put on a pair of shoes and begin walking. She hesitated at first, knowing that she was going to be killed. But in the end, she realized she had no choice and she complied. On her way out the door, Sherry said that Vera said to her, "Good night, sugar babe."
Daniel was just like, "Get your coat and shoes on now, we're leaving, we're going for a walk."
When they told her to put her shoes on, she was like yelling, "Why? Like, why? Why do you want me to get my shoes on?" And Zachary had went up to her and said, "Just get your effing shoes on."
Had she been given one final wish, it would have been to say goodbye to Willadine, her precious little girl. But instead, her last farewell came from the baby's grandmother, who knew this was the end.
And as I laid my head down, all I seen was a vision of Danny, Nicole, and Vera's purple hoodie of them walking outside on the porch. And I said, "Good night, Vera." And she said, "Good night." She said, "Good night, sugar babe." And I said, "Good night."
Vera was walked to the train tracks, where Daniel, Nicole, and Zachary all continued to stab her with one knife, passing it back and forth between them. But the knife at this point was rather blunt, and although it cut Vera and fractured some of her bones, it never penetrated deep enough to sever any large blood vessels, which meant she bled out slowly. At one point, they were even stabbing her so relentlessly that the knife was getting caught on Vera's clothing. So they decided to make her take her clothes off, to make stabbing her easier. When she was close to death and barely able to move, they made her lay down sideways on the railroad tracks, and they just left her there to die. The group would discard the knife that they had used to stab Vera in a nearby lake, and after they fled the scene, they all went drinking and began to brag about their killing. Now, the killers knew that a train was scheduled to come by at 2 a.m., and they thought it was going to hit Vera and make her into hamburger meat. They believed this would then render her unidentifiable, and much of the evidence would be lost. Therefore, they wouldn't be caught for their crime. But Vera, using her very last bit of strength after she had been left alone on the tracks that night, removed herself from the rails, then curled up into a fetal position in the middle of the tracks. When the train came at 2 a.m., it would pass over Vera's body, but it would not end up hitting her. Vera was exactly 12 inches off the ground. The train stood 13 inches. And even though Vera had died at this point, she had not been turned into hamburger meat, as the Brooks had hoped, and they were still able to identify her. The train conductor had seen Vera's body and at first thought it was a baby deer and was unable to stop in time. Once he realized that it was actually the body of a woman, he called police.
Yeah, police department fix.
Hello, this is Chris with CSX Railroad.
Yes.
Hey, we got a report that we have a train stopped over near Central Parkway between East Main Cross Street and Clinton Court, right in between there across the Blanchard River.
Okay.
We got a report that we have a train stop right now because they see a naked female body laying in the middle of the track. Appears to be deceased.
They tried to cut her head off, but couldn't get through this bone here.
Like the helter-skelter kind of stuff.
Nicole looks at me and she's like, "Well, I got my first teardrop," and then that's when it hit me.
She's like, "Did I do good? Tell me I did good."
And your son's on Facebook saying you cooked up a cover story before the murder?
Police then went to the Brooks home to question the family, and they would remove them one by one so they could speak to them individually. Except for Sherry, who was allowed to be present through all of it. So clearly, many people are scared of this woman. And when she was questioned, she told police that Vera's black boyfriend from another town must have been the one that killed her. Additionally, when the police had entered the Brooks home, They had found Nicole's bloodied shirt, the belt with the lock on it, and even a chunk of Vera's hair.
Vera's mom didn't even find out about it from the police or anybody. They went directly to Sherry first. And I think that's a bunch of crap. You know, the police department wouldn't go directly to her own mother.
Did you have to identify the body at that point?
No, because Sherry already identified it. Because Sherry told the police that Vera's parents died. I'm supposed to be dead. I've died like 3 different times in 3 different states.
According to who?
Sherry.
Daniel and Nicole ended up confessing to Vera's murder. However, they also told police that Sherry had been the one who'd given Vera drugs, as well as talked them into killing her. She had even included instructions on how to do it.
Like someone's really going to be there to help me say, hey, go get the phone over there off of my computer stand so I can call the cops. You know, they're not going to, Nikki's not going to give me a phone, Dan's not going to give me the phone. Scotty sure in the world's not going to give me the phone. And Shannon, her fat ass, was sitting on the couch playing with her phone.
I wish I would have had my phone working, because it was dead and I had no minutes, even though I know you can call 911 off of it. But
Yet everyone in the Brooks household, except for Sherry and her husband, Kevin Brooks Sr., were charged in Vera's murder.
Okay. Kind of know why you want to talk to us, right? Huh? You kind of know why we want to talk? Yep. Can you kind of go back and tell us what happened that day?
All I remember is Danny and Nicole was beating on my baby's mama, and they were making her eat a bunch of stuff, making her drink soap to piss. And then Shannon told Danny that she was pregnant, which she wasn't, and Shannon told Danny to do what she did.
Okay, so Shannon told
Danny to kill it.
Okay, is that something you heard?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember exactly what was said?
Shannon told Danny and Nicole to kill my baby's mom. Because she said that Shannon said that she was pregnant and Vera sprayed pepper mace, whatever that is, and we never had pepper mace or anything like that in the house.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Who sprayed it?
Shannon said that Vera sprayed it and killed her baby that was inside her, and which she was not pregnant. And she said Shannon told Danny and Nicole to kill her.
So where did this conversation take place at?
At my house.
Okay. What room?
In Shannon's room.
Shannon's room?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else hear that?
No.
Okay. And then what happened after she said that?
They waited last at the nighttime and then took her and did that.
Okay. Did you hear him talk to her about leaving or anything like that?
No, once I found out all that, I went to go get drunk.
Okay. And who'd you go drinking with?
My cousin, Desta Bixler.
Okay. And was anybody else with you guys?
Just me, Garth, and the dude Alan Cap.
Okay. And was Daniel and Nicole with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
They came a couple hours later though.
Okay. Let me jog your memory, okay? Like we talked about being truthful and honest, okay? That's not matching up with a lot of the other witnesses.
Daniel and Nicole would both end up taking plea deals, and Daniel was sentenced to 40 years to life, while Nicole was only sentenced to 23 years for conspiracy. Now, Zachary was only charged with obstruction of justice, and he received just 4 years, even though he was very much a part of Vera's murder. Sherry's son Michael was charged with obstruction of justice, and he was sentenced to 30 days in jail with 5 years of probation. Michael's girlfriend Shannon was charged with obstruction of justice. However, she took a deal in exchange for her cooperation with police, and she received probation. Shannon even admitted that the night of Vera's murder, Vera had looked to her for help, and she knew that Vera was going to be killed, but she did nothing. Shannon had also witnessed many other episodes of Vera being abused by Sherry and the boys. She had also been a part of the many conversations they had about how they were going to kill Vera. But She just got probation. Garth was charged with obstruction of justice and just given a fine. Chucky was also charged with obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced him to a rehab program at a juvenile institute out of state, with the stipulation that if he did not complete it, they would hold him until his 21st birthday. However, he did end up completing it and he was released prior to his 18th birthday. And Scotty was also charged with obstruction of justice. He was given probation. It said that Scotty was never mean to Vera himself, but he had witnessed the abuse and, like many others, did nothing to help her. Apparently, Scotty was one of the people in the home that Vera thought as safe, and she was the closest to him. But no one was charged in relation to all the abuse that Vera had suffered prior to her death, even though looking at her body, it was very clear that she had been beaten. The day after Vera's murder, police searched the riverbank, where they found her clothes. And inside her favorite purple hoodie, they found a note, which read, "I love you, Willadine. You are a good little baby girl to us. I am glad to be your mommy, and I am glad that I had you on November 4th at 4:16 a.m. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 19 inches long. Mummy loves you." And following Vera's murder, Sherry, who remained free, tried to say that she had custody of Willadine. But this fell through with social services. So under Sherry's direction, Zachary filed a petition for custody. But during a visit with him to determine placement, Willadine screamed uncontrollably and refused to go to him. Following that, Zachary refused to go to any more visits with his daughter and didn't take the parenting classes required. Therefore, the state of Ohio revoked Zachary's parental rights and Willadine was adopted out to a couple about a year later. After the case was resolved, detectives took the note that Vera had written from the evidence locker and they gave it to Willadine's adoptive family. They hope the family will give it to her when she is old enough and the time is right. Following Vera's murder, those in the Brooks family who were not incarcerated remained living in the Brooks home. That's up until a few years ago when they moved out and there is now a new family living there. Shannon and Michael ended up changing their names to Shannon and Nick Nagel. Sherry, Scotty, and Kevin Sr. were busted on drug trafficking charges in 2015, and Sherry spent 40 months in federal prison on this charge. Then, in 2021, Sherry Brooks died from cancer.
In September 2009, because I was going to get a birthday present for my grandson right there, and I saw her then, and she was all smiley, saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom, Mom." And she grabbed my hand and was all over on me, and the baby jumped out of her arms into mine, and I said, "I love you, baby girl." And that was the last time I saw her. I mean, I know she's around. I knew she was around town, and I knew where she lived at, but I could never see her. And then October 19th, I was in the hospital because I had a stroke, Blanchard Valley, and she called me every day, about 6 times a day, wanting to know how I was. And she says, "Mom," I know I'm going to cry. "Squeeze. Mom, I can't lose you. Don't die on me. Squeeze." She said, "I love you, Mom." I said, "I love you too, honey." Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
A young feeling. Alright.
So how did you find out about the news this weekend?
My daughter's Ashley's boyfriend's brother called me and said that they were blowing up his phone, saying there was a female 24 that they found that was murdered on the tracks, and everybody was saying it was my daughter Vera. Well, I didn't believe it because, you hear all kinds of rumors out there at first. And then as it went on, everybody was coming to tell me, Vera got murdered. And I'm saying, "My daughter?" And they said, "Yeah, your daughter." And I'm like, "It can't be." And they said, "Yeah." So then Monday morning, me and her dad got up and went up to the police department. And that's when they told me, they said, "We're sorry to tell you it is your daughter." After I found out, she got murdered and everything, it broke my heart. Because Me and my sister did everything together.
Vera Jo was laid to rest on April 1st, 2011 in Knoll Crest Cemetery, and she has a beautiful headstone that reads, Vera Jo Messersmith, as she always hated the surname Reigle since her father had abused her. It's outrageous that the Brooks family received little to no punishment for their horrific treatment and murder of Vera, who was a sweet and innocent girl and wanted nothing more than to make others happy and to be a good mother. It must be partially or entirely out of fear of Sherry and the Brooks family due to their gang affiliations. What do you think? Why were their sentences so light for such terrible crimes? So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. And turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least twice every week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.